Hello YouTube, I am Aaron, Lone Star Drift Week 8 stuff. We're here at Fontana Village, almost 3/4 of the way through the trip. We still have 2 more tracks. He was leading tours through Tail of the Dragon and all kinds of stuff. This is Taylor Ray, superstar YouTuber, who just keeps climbing higher and higher through the ranks of views in your hearts as we go.
Your hearts.
So we're gonna make a couple videos and chop this up, and I wanted to do the first one as something fun. I want him, because not a lot of us.
Hold on, I don't know any. Interview is what I was told going into this. So Aaron's probably gonna throw me some random curveball real quick. I mean, I'm ready. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, convince me to build a turbo V8.
Oh.
You're one of the only people who has a turbo V8. I'd never ridden in a drift one. He was telling me to get one. I got super excited. I was watching the BMW one on Drift Week and stuff, like how simple it was and how cheap, and I'm like, oh man, I could do this. And then he was convincing me, and then I rode in it, and then I'm like, oh, I don't know. So convince me.
So.
Because you're the only dude that's cool enough to own one. And a Corvette.
So I was super against turbo LSs in drift cars. Like every time someone did it, oh, someone's driving their cars.
We're good, let's keep going.
No, I know, it's funny. It's crazy being here, hearing all the car noises and stuff. Anyway, I always thought it was like super stupid for drifting. I'm like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just, you know, you can make 600 NA, whatever. But after thinking about it more, for my Vette, for my scenario, if I wanted 650 to 700 wheel, that's a pretty strung out NA motor. That's like an all out, like maximum effort NA LS to make that power level. And it dawned on me that that power level, revving an LS to 8,000, 8,500, is more stress than if you just take a forged bottom end LS and put a turbo on it and rev it to 6,800 and just gear your car tall. Like the engine is happier. You know, we have in our head, like, at least I did for a long time, naturally aspirated, like less heat, simpler, you know what I mean? Like less problems, less strain, less stress. But in reality, like a low boost turbo LS is probably about as little strain as you can get. Like you're not really working it that hard, and it's just sneezing out power. So that's what I like about it, and that was like the realization that I came to, is like if you want 500, just do a 6.2 liter aluminum block with a big cam. If you want more than 500, you're better off. I mean, you're gonna spend way more money to do like a $20,000 NA motor that might only make 550, 580. And you're gonna have to rev it, and it's gonna be strung out, and it's gonna be solid lifter.
So you telling me all this stuff convinced me, and I got super excited, and then I got inside of the car, and then I rode in it, but then it was super lazy. And I think the driver was a little bit more exciting maybe in his like his supercharged S54 car, which is kind of weird because it's not a car I'd want. I think it got lazy because it had so much torque, you could drive it any way you wanted, and like the tire wear was brutal in the thing. So like my problem is I can afford to do it. I'm capable of doing it because I have Mark and like True helping me and stuff, and I have ECU Master there, and like these people that will help us get through it. ECU Master is not just a sponsorship thing; it's a buddy of mine that owns a company and can help us with all the technical things. So we could build a really cool car that like steps in boost by gear, by like RPM, and we could create the power band we want and stuff. And we have a dyno, like we have everything to make this happen. But I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to create a car that makes so much torque. One, I don't have to kind of floor it everywhere and kind of feel the excitement, feel the power band go up in a linear fashion so that it pulls in a smooth fashion, if you know what I mean. This thing, it didn't even look like you could floor it ever because it just blows the tires up.
I mean, that is a thing.
You're like, yes, it makes so much power.
It's like the same.
So like, it makes too much.
It's the same argument as like, remember how people used to say, now LSs are so commonplace, but you remember 10 years ago, LSs weren't that common. Like, you know, the swap kits were expensive. There weren't a lot of options. Back then, people were like, oh, I don't want an LS because people drive it so boring. You can drive around at 2,000 RPM. And it's like, just because drifting, you don't, though. You know
right, but I think drifting changed, and a lot of people don't realize it. The tires are better now. They're bigger. We run 285s on, like, street cars, or not street cars, but, like, whatever.
Stuff. I run 275s on my F80.
Right. So I was going to say, we have the grip now to be able to do that. 10 years ago, if you remember that, we were on like 225s and stuff, a lot of people with V8 swaps.
That's true.
So it's kind of a little bit different because the cars now have more grip
and you can use more power. I see
Yeah.
what you're saying, but I just think, I think it's a choice on how you drive that. Like, so my buddy Ben, when he built his LS Miata, I already had mine, and he was like, man, my tires last way longer than yours, you know? Like, I get 10 laps out of a set of tires. And when he first started driving, he drove it really lazy, you know? Like, and he came from a turbo car, but he drove it like 3,000 RPM, blah, blah, blah. And then once he got used to it, then it was limiter everywhere because he could for fun. And then he'd roast a set of tires off in 4 laps instead of 10. So I think it's like a choice thing to drive like that. Like, I don't know. I think my Vette is exciting to drive, you know, and
Yeah.
it makes a ton of torque. But I don't. I'll pedal it so I'm not eating limiter, but that's about it. You know what I mean? Like, if I get it up there, I'll pedal it a little bit if I have to.
How much torque does it make, and what's the boost at?
I
It's a
don't-
427?
Yeah, I don't know how much torque it makes because the dyno was on the torque readings inaccurate. It made 1,100 wheel at 15 pounds of boost.
Oh my God.
But it's never seen 15 pounds of boost since.
How much did it make on the engine dyno?
It made 1,900 on the engine dyno, but that was with like twin giant turbos.
Right.
That was with different turbos. The engine builder, Borowski, they like dyno all their engines.
That's nuts.
They make a lot of engines for like the drag and drive dudes, or people who want like a Nelson Racing engines, like a 2,000 horsepower street motor, like those kind of people.
That's crazy.
So they dynoed it to 1,900.
So, if you know how I drive and what I do and stuff, do you suggest a turbo V8?
Yeah.
Or do you think I should just do another LS3? This video is about me. The next one's going to be about him.
I think you should do it just because I think it's fun and exciting, and like you can make whatever power you want, you know? It's like, you think about this. You're worried it'll make too much power. You can always turn it down, but you're not going to.
Yeah, but then you have an intercooler and you have a turbo and everything up front and all the plumbing and stuff.
You do have more stuff.
You might as well just run it and be fast.
Yeah, and it's just fun though.
Is your tire wear bad on that car?
It's not any worse than I think anything else would be. It's
Really?
not any worse than like I think it would be if I had a 600 horsepower motor. It might be better because I can run more grip and I'm not just blowing the tires off. But also I gear my car tall. You know, like my Miata, I'd go around the track with my 88 miles an hour in third, and I was like, this is enough gear. And that same track in the Vette, I might run 110. You know, but it's fine. Tire wear is pretty good.
So going back real quickly to like my setup, do you enjoy your Miata just as much as the Corvette with the naturally aspirated engine and all that stuff? Is the tire wear better?
Tire wear is the same because the Miata, I just stand it on limiter. I can do the same amount of laps, but they're two different cars. You know, we're talking about like a 205/15 for like a fun event tire versus like a 285 on the Vette. But the nice thing about the Vette is I can take that car to any track. Like, we're going to CMP later in this trip, which I don't know if you've driven there, but it's a fast track, and I have my Vette there with like a 285 at 10 PSI. See, for me, and you're like me, like, I think that guy who you rode with, like, probably he didn't have his car hooked up. So, like, yeah, it's going to blow the tires off instantly. But even, like, a 500 horsepower LS is going to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
My LS makes like 480 and it struggles in third. It has a 3.5 gear.
but that's what I'm saying,
and all
because
that.
you hook your car up. But I'm saying, even your motor in a car with, like, 40 PSI and some 265s, it's just going to be a limiter. So it wasn't really a good representation.
I see what you're saying.
Whereas, like, I have my car, I just hooked it up more and more. And it's like, you can do that. You can have it super hooked up. You can have extra wheel speed if, like, you want to, because you want to do some big link that, like, you couldn't do before. You have, like, a huge power range to work with. Like, my turbo car makes way more torque than,
It is cheating.
what do you mean?
Oh, all this stuff?
What is cheating?
The turbo V8 thing? You're just like up a gear, up the power, everything.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's true. That's what.
No, I don't mean cheating in a bad way.
I know what you mean.
It's like cool.
I remember when I decided to do the Turbo LS, I was like, in my Miata, it's always had kind of low wheel speed, and you'd see these guys like gear their cars really tall, and I was like, why? Why are you doing that? But I kind of see why now. I don't know. It's one of those things. I can't say if it's going to turn it into like a 2-lap and the tires are done car. I'm surprised you're not already there with 500.
I get like 25 laps per set of tires or something. But I mean, I drive without always being on whatever. Like,
right.
The car is like very dialed in for how much grip to like barely drift and everything.
Right.
Even in second gear at like certain tracks, it struggles.
Yeah, so I think you could use more power.
Okay.
So you might as well.
One other thing I was gonna say real quickly is like I bought a JayZ last night, and my friend True.
Last night?
Yeah, I'll tell you that story later. True sent me he's a buddy of mine that tunes cars and has a JayZ X100. He has a 1J dyno plot, and then we put an LS3 dyno plot, and you do he's getting a 3.4 liter stroker from our buddy at ECU Master, because he sells stroker kits and all this stuff, and he has another company, and the dyno plot is comical for a 3.4 liter with like a 35R on it or whatever.
Like it's super torquey or super peaky?
Super torquey. I mean, it's making like 600 foot-pounds of torque at 3,000 RPM. Oh. But then you look at you're like, wow, that's so cool. And then you're like, that's a $20,000 motor. It's so blah, 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 billet mains. And you're thinking about all that stuff. And then you're just oh, a turbo 5.3 will
literally do more.
Yeah, do more, easier, almost on a stock engine.
I always find it funny
and
how
it's dirt. It's like a $500 engine.
Right. I mean, realistically, for $3 to $4 grand, you could have a solid turbo LS. You know what I mean? Because you'd want to do better lifters, just for all the same stuff you'd want to do for any drift car. You don't have to do rods and pistons, but you might as well because they're so cheap. A whole drop-in set of rods and pistons, $1,500, and that's 8 of them. You know what I mean? So the other thing I find funny is how you'll see a lot of the JayZ guys and stuff. They're like, oh, I don't want a V8. I don't want the cheater torque. It's so boring. I don't like them. Blah 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 blah. But then they'll be like, look at my dyno graph. I made my JayZ and make a bunch of torque at low RPM, and you're like, well. Aren't you your goal is to make it like a torquey V8, but your hate on the torquey V8 is that it's torquey, it makes low in power? It doesn't really make sense.
So moving forward, do you think that we're going to move into an age of people just turboing V8s constantly? Because right now we're at a kind of point that how do you say? We still see an 800 horsepower drift car, and you're probably past this because you have one. But I'm like, God damn, that's crazy. And you see these cars, and then you're just like, wait, I can make one for a few $1,000s.
Right.
Because I already have a V8 car that's been running and reliable and a rear mount radiator setup and stuff. It's not much extra just to add this turbo thing.
I mean, it's do you have other cars to drive?
Yeah.
Then you might as well. Because then you have it. If you want to drive MSR and run the car hooked up, you can use 800 and use all of it.
Here's a good question. If you had a replica of your car with no turbo on it that made 600 wheel, which would you take out to go drifting all the time? The one that was naturally aspirated, the turbo V8 one?
The turbo one. Because
Really?
I had this thought when we were building the car and the certainty of clutch kickers was uncertain. I was like, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll just convert it back to NA and run that. But then after driving it with the turbo setup, I'm like, I don't really see what benefit there would be to switching it to NA. It doesn't get super hot. It's fun to drive. It's got a good power band. I don't know. I think sometimes we talk ourselves into these things oh, well, if it's a turbo 1,000 horsepower car, I can only drive it. I drive that car all the time. I haven't lately because I've been driving the F80, but I'll just take it to a fun event and go all day on a set of tires. Not all day, but all session.
You're all 4 laps on a set of tires.
Yeah, all 4 laps that we get in the session, but it's the same as my F80 or the same as my Miata. It's really not much different.
Okay.
So I don't know.
So you think I should?
I think you should just because why not?
It's going to be on an LS3.
I mean,
with a cam.
Fine. I don't know how that works.
How what works?
A lot of people don't turbo the LS3s.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine from that. I'm just saying man, it's going to be 4 PSI to make 600 wheel probably.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be ridiculous.
It's going to be super easy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's about the end of that subject. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
I don't know. Turbo LSs are cool. They're cooler than I thought they would be. Heat isn't really that big.
No, keep going.
Well, no, that's the thing, though. It's easier on the car because you don't have to clutch kick it. A strung out V8, you hear these dudes wah, 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 wah. You don't have to do any of that. I have a big, heavy clutch.
Oh.
And it makes power from 2,500 on.
I do have one question. How about the Miata Syndrome, where you were the king of the world and everyone loved you when you were in an underpowered car.
This is a
the
deep
underdog
question.
syndrome. That's what I was going to say.
Oh,
the underdog syndrome.
This is a deep one.
No, but it's true.
It's so true and it's so frustrating.
Whether it be from a judging perspective of or fans or just the relatability of a normal person, a person can relate to your Miata with a 5.3 and it'd be like, even if the dry sump system costs more than the engine, you know, everything else, they can be like, I relate to that little tiny Miata with a 5.3. Maybe one day if I save, I can afford a hardtop kind of guy.
Right.
You know, versus the turbo V8, they're just like, oh, you have a Corvette, which I couldn't afford if I wanted with a 7-liter engine with a turbo on it.
I don't know if it's that as much as it is. I mean, I'm sure that's part of it, but it's just like people have this perception that like power equals speed in a drift car, and like if you have a more powerful car, it's just going to be like super easy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Well, it is.
But it's not. It's different, and you know what I mean? Like it's different. It's like I did this competition, and the judges and the announcers were like, "Oh, it was like my qualifying run," and they were like, "Oh, he's not using all the power," and I'm like, "It's a lot harder to use all of 1,000 horsepower than it is to use all of 500 than it is to use all of 300." You know, it gets easy to go around.
You shouldn't have to use all your power in a drift competition. It should just be based on line, angle, speed kind of thing, whatever.
Right. But anyway,
if you built a better car, you built a better car.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, keep going.
I agree with that. But yeah, no, it was like a light switch. Like we were always the underdog, and I didn't like that. I didn't like the like, if it was a close battle and people were like, well, like you definitely would have had him if he had way more car than you, and I'm like, but it doesn't matter. That's you can't factor that into the equation, like.
Right. But we do mentally.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
If a guy kept up with your car and he had some like Honda powered Corolla, everyone would cheer for the dude with the Honda powered Corolla because it's more relatable or like underdog.
Like I feel like people would be like, well, you should have won because you have way less car and it was close. And I'm like, that's not how it works though. So I built a better car, and then like overnight it was like, you now have an unfair advantage. You're a puppy kicker. And I'm like, I haven't even. How we got to learn the car
I do have
yet?
to say, I was at the LZ Invitational, and you like were in grid, and you kind of revved your car a few times, and an external gate opens up, and like I look over in my jalopy. Bye. I look over my jalopy S14. I'm just like, oh god damn, he brought a bazooka.
But it's like at the LZ Invitational, the power is completely irrelevant.
It is, but it's still intimidating and hilarious.
But that's what's so frustrating is like, it's so weird to be in that scenario. Like the Miata, people underestimated the Miata, and now people overestimate the Vette. So it's like this weird.
I still think if you could have got 285s on that Miata, I know it'd be difficult and stuff. It would be like a murder machine. No one would be able to compete with that thing.
Yeah, but I mean, even with the 225 Nitto NT01s at like 10 psi, if it was a fast track, like we didn't have enough power with 500.
You could add it. You can turbo things.
Well, we put nitrous on it.
Yeah.
And then that kind of hurt it.
Okay. So I need to turbo my car.
I think you should do it. If you had one car and you were like, let me have one car that's going to do everything I ever want to do, like, I'd still say maybe it's a good call because you can turn it down to weight, put like 3-pound springs in it, turn it down to wastegate spring when you don't want to make a bunch of power, and then turn it up.
All right.
The only thing is you have to run a full exhaust because if you run an exhaust out the hood, they sound horrible.
I'll remember that.
That is the biggest downside, but you like quiet cars, but the biggest downside of the Turbo S is they are so quiet.
The external gate's not loud?
The external gate is.
Yeah. If you're at 3 PSI, I feel like the external gate will always be open.
But when you're at low boost and it opens, it doesn't sound as cool as when you're at high boost and it opens.
Because there's not all that violent force behind it?
There's not a lot of, I guess there's like a ton of volume. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
But I think you should do it and try it and see what happens, and then...
I could always take it back off.
That's what I'm saying.
All right.
And be a fun experiment.
Well, thank you so much for your time and everything. I guess we have to go turbo the V8. That's going to be hilarious if we do that. By the way, Pro-Am next year, we were laughing. We had such a good time at Lone Star Drift Pro-Am this year. Rudy and I and a bunch of guys were competing, and like it was
I was
knife
jealous
fight.
Watching that.
You need to come out.
I know, I'm coming out.
Rudy's bringing out his new car that has like a $20,000 JayZ in it. He was building it for Formula D, but isn't going to do that, so he's going to run that in our Lone Star Drift Pro-Am. I'm going to run, I guess, my Turbo LS. Hopefully we can like man, we're so bad, we don't even have time to put a bumper on it, let alone a V8. But we'll get it done. Especially when like you have the dyno in-house and everything else, all this stuff is so much easier. Because half the time you just spend trailering the thing to the dyno and everywhere else. Maybe Taylor will bring out that Corvette.
I'm planning on bringing out that Corvette.
We were just talking, we have a place to store it indoors in a garage, so you could fly in and it'll be delivered to the track for you at each round of Lone Star Drift. And then you could also have access to a garage with tools in Houston so that you fly in the day before, prep it, someone trailers it there, all done.
I mean, that sounds pretty great.
Well, then maybe he'll compete in Lone Star Drift this year.
I would like to, but I got to get a bunch of 285s.
No, I know.
Is that the thing?
Yeah, 285s.
I want to do it.
That sounds like an easy thing. Well, you can run 275s.
Oh, true.
And your turbo Corvette.
I'll run a slightly smaller tire so people don't complain. No, it's
He already won in the freaking Miata when he was here.
Yeah, I won both rounds that I did.
Yeah.
And that one was
See,
cool.
that was a cheater car.
People thought it was a cheater car. It made 350 wheel. You know what was cheater about it was that it didn't make so much power, and I could launch in first gear.
And just take off.
Like now, I would never even consider, the only time I ever used first gear is loading in the trailer.
And the Miata or the Corvette?
In the Miata.
Yeah.
Back then, I used to launch in first gear and it would just dead hook and go because it made so little power. And I just floor it everywhere.
There we go. Should I not turbo the car? Do that? So
no,
I can floor it?
I definitely like it way better with way more power.
Okay.
But think about it. The extra power gives you headroom. Gives you the option to do what you want.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, it's not the same as driving a Z where you're just foot to the floor for the entire lap, right? Like, that's going to be... You're never going to replicate that.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're driving a Z foot to the floor for a whole lap, you're like, man, I wish I had a little more power. That'd be really cool.
Yeah,
you know
all I ever want is a car that runs nonstop. Mine's broken right now.
Yeah, I mean, the NA setup's definitely better for that.
Yeah.
But
okay.
The turbo stuff's sick. It makes a lot of power. And I think having that option with how you guys have a bunch of big tracks to have a car with a lot of power would be worthwhile.
Yeah, I did run out of
if
power
If you were going to like
year.
just drive at the skid pad at OSW, I'd be like, nah, dude, just leave the NA V8 in there. But like, it's cool to have. It's not like at CMP, having my car, I put it at like 130 miles an hour wheel speed, which is, it was sick. Foot to the floor. And it was great.
See dollar signs flashing before my eyes as
the tires lasted like 2 laps there, which like everyone else that was driving pretty much anything besides like an E46 that like, you know, was on some 225s, their tires are lasting about the same. I feel like once you cross like the 500 horsepower threshold, it's all the same.
Yeah, I feel that.
Like unless you just gear it short.
I was just laughing. We're literally building like a drivetrain, not a drivetrain, but like an engine package that is better than like the RTR Mustangs for like $4,000.
That is wild to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, it does take more than that if you wanted it to be reliable at that level, like the FD level. Like I think the heat shielding stuff I have is probably like $3,000, like to have that done on all my hot stuff. But like I think that's worth every penny. But most people aren't willing to pay that.
Yeah.
But like it keeps the engine bay is colder than the intake air temps, which aren't hot. You know what I mean? Like the engine bay on a hot day, like a 95-degree day, will get to like 120 degrees.
That's amazing.
Which is not hot, you know what I mean? So like, I think that thermal management makes a big difference.
Cool.
So, heat management, if you do a turbo LS.
Thank you so much. All right, boom.
And always, thank you to all the sponsors of Drift Week 8, and thanks to Taylor Ray for doing this interview, but thank you to ECU Master USA. They make great standalone ECU products and all kinds of other stuff that goes in your car. Go to their website, check them out. Valino Tires. We could not do this trip without their support because they bring thousands of tires and change them and dispose of them and do everything turnkey so all the drivers can sit back and just have an amazing adventure. Thank you to BC Racing Custom Coilovers, the most supportive coilover company in drifting. They've been supporting us forever, so thank you so much. NK Wheels, thank you very much. NK Wheels, been with us for a decade. Vapetasia, he drives on the trip. Chris Finch, thank you so much for supporting Drift Week. Vapetasia. Heatwave, big shout out to Heatwave. They did a lot of help this year, so thank you so much to them. Go check out their sunglasses, go buy something. Thank you so much for being so supportive in drifting. Just Racing, this is an engine machine shop out in Vegas. Go check them out. And they specialize in JayZ stuff, by the way, but I make them do my V8 stuff. And thank you to whatmonsters.com. Go to their website, use the discount code EBISU for 20% off, I think it is. And just thank you for everybody for watching and everything else. Bye.